Hello and welcome to all. I am Geeta Vijay and I am here with Bishop Prince Singh. It is a pleasure to welcome you to our exhibit on Christianity. A few of us have worked on it. We have enjoyed doing so and hope that you will enjoy browsing through the exhibit. Let me now turn it over to Prince to say a few words.
Thank you, Geeta. I'm delighted that we can have an opportunity to share some of the particular riches that each of us is able to offer in order for us to get a sense of how we make meaning. And certainly one way that Indian Christianity has engaged over the years is to take the central message of Jesus, which is probably simply communicated as loving God and loving neighbor, and to see how historically the Indian continent, subcontinent, has engaged this particular message and engaged it in many forms over the years. So it goes way back, if you were to look into our history, to the Apostle Thomas, one of the 12 men who was around Jesus. Of course, Jesus had many women disciples as well, but as history would have it, we know of the story of how the Apostle Thomas went to India. And we do have some evidence of how the early Christians who followed the Syrian Christian way of life, so to speak, as early as the 6th century. We have churches that were following that tradition. Another tradition that we know of is of the Apostle Bartholomew, who went to the Kalyan area, out of which I think Bombay and Goa got a sense of Christianity to start. So there's some origin stories that go way back from around the early part of the 1st century onwards. So we do have a vibrant Christianity that has existed, coming down a little more to the modern era with the East India Company. We had several denominations, so to speak, come over and start out many Protestant versions of Christianity. So I'm talking about Anglican, Presbyterian, Methodist, Reformed churches, etc. And then in the early part of the 20th century, you have what is perhaps best defined as or described as the ecumenical movements that influenced and helped form things like the Church of South India in 1947. In fact, just a month after the British left is when, or that India got its independence in September 27th, in fact, of 1947, is when the Church of South India was formed. And that was a coming together of Anglicans, Presbyterians, Methodists, British Methodists, and Reformed traditions to form one church. And it was in response to a prayer of Jesus out of the Gospel of John, that they all may be one. So movement towards becoming one church was central. In other words, unity in the midst of diversity was what was driving that movement. In fact, it took about 30 years for that ecumenical church to be born. And in fact, I was ordained into that church, in the Church of South India. And it's still a very vibrant church. In fact, I think in the Indian Christian landscape, it is probably the second biggest body next to the Roman Church within the subcontinent. And then there was a similar experiment that became a reality in 1970 It's known as the Church of North India. So geographically, you have those two. And then there are several other churches that make up a very rich tapestry in India of Pentecostal apostolic churches, etc., many of whom have had some transfer from other parts of the world, but have taken root and in many ways indigenized versions of spirituality from within. So Indian Christianity is pretty rich in its complex, multi-dimensional senses of how this sort of drive to follow the teachings of Jesus in real time over the years, etc. So that's a sort of a brief snapshot of some of the major historic movements of Christianity within India.
Thank you very much, Bishop Singh. So with that, we hope that you will stop by, take a look at the exhibit, enjoy it, and there will be some handouts for you and some phone numbers if you need to or would like to find out anything more. Thank you.
Geeta, would you want to just spend a few seconds on describing what somebody who's visiting the exhibit would like to see? I think Bishop Singh, thank you very much for an overview of the history and, like you said, the rich sort of tapestry of all kinds of Christian streams sort of represented in India. I grew up and went to a convent school was run by the Seventh-day Adventists, but then I also went to do my management post-graduation at a college that was run by Jesuits. So not know as much as you guys do, but I had sort of a sense for, some of the contributions. So Geeta, what else do you think a visitor to this exhibit would learn about Christianity in India that's different from, what we would get if we were in some other part of the world?
Okay. So we have tried to give you a historical snapshot of Christianity, like Bishop Singh said, from 52 AD till contemporary India. The expansion of Christianity from Kerala to Tamil Nadu, Goa, Bombay, Mangalore, and a little bit to the far east, northeast states of India. We've also talked about some saints, and you might be familiar with Mother Teresa. And I think that about covers it. Should give you a good sense of what the religion is about.
And if I may add, Geeta, some of the other pieces that we also included are the impact of education, the various schools and colleges, which became one of the sources of engaging the empowerment of people, so to speak. And then the health services, hospitals and clinics were a big part of expressing compassion to neighbor. So I think our exhibits will also at least give some glimpses of that. One other thing that we also raise up is some of the ways in which theology is coming from the ground, so to speak, in forms like the Dalit theology, which is a theology of the quote unquote subaltern groups, like the Dalits, who are the scheduled caste, who have a very profound theology of liberation that is being articulated and engaged to bring a deeper sense of particular experiences connecting with this gospel of Jesus. So,
Thank you.
I think Geeta has really helped us to bring a rich, at least a snapshot of a flavor of different aspects of Christianity in its expressions in India.
Wonderful. And thank you both, and I'm sure everybody else who helped behind the scenes to put the exhibit together.
Thank you. Thank you, Abbas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abbas.
Take care.